Michigan. I've been in the business for also about 30 years, some years, 25 years in the US, working for bigger corporations like Mahle and Bosch. And I've been active in Mexico and Canada as well, so the whole North America. In the last 5 years, we've been starting up. I've been responsible for Hugo Benzing as a startup company. Hugo Benzing is a family-owned business from Germany, about 1,000 people here. We started here 5 years ago with 5 people, and today we have around 50, more or less, depending on the pandemic situation. And so that was an interesting journey to build up a new business that goes from quality management, production planning, logistics, finance, and accounting, and last but not least, HR, which is what we're talking about today. We're a producer, we're an automotive producer, tier 1, tier 2, to the automotive OEMs and their tier 1s. We make metal precision parts, mainly for automatic transmissions. So we're a production manufacturing facility in all the joys and challenges that come with it. I'm looking forward to this panel, and thank you for everybody. Thank you everybody for joining.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And last but not least, let's hear from Wim.
Thank you very much, Kristi. My name is Wim Van Acker, and I'm a client partner with Chicago and Detroit-based retained executive search firm Hall & Richardson. We are focused on the automotive industry and also on industrials in general. We are hired by employers for hard-to-fill positions on a senior level and also on a mid-management level through our second brand, which is called Flight. Our clients are diverse, large multinational stock-listed companies, large and mid-sized private equity-owned companies, privately held or family-held, smaller and mid-sized companies. And we're currently serving American, German, and Mexican clients. Because of our work, we gain profound insight in the current workforce of our clients and their competitors. And the organizations we usually find the best suited candidates, which are those competitors. So we see differences between our clients and their competitors. We also become familiar with the intended direction of workforce development of our clients, and we try to help them realize their goals. So I'm really looking forward to participating on this panel, and I give it back to Kristi.
Thank you so much. So at this point, we are going to have an opportunity to just dig into the panel. And I want to start out with Bonnie. So Bonnie, we hear a lot about the topic of diversity and inclusion. And I just want to ask you, what does diversity and inclusion really mean from your perspective?
Well, that's a great place to start, isn't it? Diversity is about the full spectrum of human differences. So what it can refer to are internal factors that a person is born into or belongs to, such as race, age, gender, national origin, could be ethnicity, as well as physical and mental ability. So this is how we normally think about diversity when we're considering these internal factors. There's also something called external diversity, and this refers to characteristics related to a person that can be changed or modified on their own accord. So it could be their educational level, their skills, interests, religion, where they live, geographical location, socioeconomic status, experiences, as well as citizenship. So these are things that are external diversity. And then, of course, we have worldview diversity, which is all about people's differences in the worldview. And that could be things regarding their knowledge of history, political philosophies, any cultural experiences that they have had. So diversity is wide ranging. So I wanted to, pull it out of that element, how we normally think of it about it just having to do with, race, gender, religion, and so forth. So diversity really relies on inclusion for successful execution within an organization.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you made sure that the net was cast very widely, because a lot of times we hear these words and we get a visual image of what we think they are, and we may have missed quite a bit. So now I'm going to turn it over to Matthias. And I have a very specific question because of his background, to talk about diversity and inclusion and the difference that we might see in North America versus Germany or across Europe. So would you please share your perspective on how it differs?
Well, there's a big difference in diversity and inclusion, I might say, from a if we compare U.S. or North America to Germany. In Germany, due to the fact that after the Second World War, the economy was started to grow and flourish and bust out in the 70s. Many of you that are from Germany in the panel might know there was a call for workers from Southern Europe, and I'm talking about Spain, Italy, Greece, and Turkey, Yugoslavia, and you name it, and hence. Now, 50 years later, so to speak, there is a second and third generation, maybe sometimes a fourth generation in Germany that is professional and educated and is part and included in society as well as in the workforce. So I think inclusion or diversity in Germany is I'd say a bit more evolved and in regards to the US. Here, what we have seen, and if I may speak about our experiences, we're building up from, as I mentioned before, from 5 employees to 50 in, we're located in Wixom, Michigan, which is, I would say, a fairly affluent area. And we're a manufacturing facility in that affluent area, so we're recruiting for production employees, which many times, or most of the time, that's not a highly educated pool that we're looking for, or personnel that we're looking for. Hence, it's also lower paid. And naturally, through our recruiting that we do, and I can get into how we do this later, or what our ideas or our successful approaches were. Our diversity here is very different to what we have in Germany, in let's say in our Hugo Benzing headquarters, or in other bigger corporations that I've worked for. We have I'm very proud actually that we do have that. We have, from an ethnicity point, just made a list here now what we had and what we have. We have from all continents. You speak about a lot of the Mid-Easterns, African. I'm speaking about Cameroon, Nigeria, India, even a Polynesian we have here. And due to our nature of our production, we have packaging jobs and machine operating jobs. There's all kinds of ages there, from 18 to 67. I realized. And also, we have a very diverse workforce from a gender point of view. We're about 50% female to male, and so we're pretty proud of that. It's different, and it's very different to what we see in Germany. Of course, there's now a shortage there as well, and the Eastern European countries play into that as well, where we recruit in Germany for jobs. That's in short the difference that I can see. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And one of the things that I think is very interesting, and why I'm so glad you're a part of the panel, is because of the rich diversity that you have within your organization. And we're going to dig more into how you're able to leverage that for success. So thank you. Now I'm going to turn to Wim. So Wim, you've lived on 3 continents. can you share with me how you see diversity and inclusion differing around the world?
Thank you, Kristi. I will try. I have worked the past 17 years in the US. Before that, I worked for 10 years in Brazil. And before that, I worked for 11 years in Europe. So I have worked on those three continents. I'll leave out Europe because Matthias already spoke about that. So let me talk about Brazil and the US. What I found during my work is that the constraints are different based on your geographic location. So for example, one of the big issues in Brazil is what Bonnie called the socioeconomic status. So the Brazilian society is diverse in terms of race and skin color, and there are no constraints there, but there are constraints in terms of people who grew up poor. And the school system also creates inequality because the universities are free. However, you enter university based on a performance test, and the public schools are the worst of all schools. So what you see is that those who go to private schools have the better scores and enter universities, which are, by the way, for free. So you have a situation in Brazil that the rich kids who go to private schools end up going for free to the best universities. So poverty is a huge issue, and socioeconomic status is one of the hurdles you have to work on to create opportunities and also leverage the potential the population has. Now in the US, it's different. I would say probably 20 years ago, ethnic diversity was one of the issues to overcome, gender equality as well. To me, right now, it seems based on my own experience that only race is the biggest hurdle to overcome. Now it all starts at the top. So I just did before our panel some quick research. If you look at the German government, 8 out of 16 cabinet members are females. If you look at the US, 6 out of 16 are females, and that is the Biden administration. President Trump's cabinet had 2 out of 16 females, and President Obama had 4 out of 16 females. So to me, it seems that there's a way to go. If you look at other countries in Europe, for example, France, 22 out of 44 are females. And then in Brazil, which I perceived, having worked there for 10 years and still doing business there, seems like gender equality has been accepted and has developed. But if you look at the government, only 3 of 23 cabinet ministers are females. So there are very interesting differences, and government is not representative of reality on the ground in companies.
So that's really interesting. And I'm going to actually probe a little bit before we go into our next question. I'm going to let any of the panelists speak to this. But one of the interesting things that we see when we look at diversity, particularly in North America, is that at certain levels in organizations, you may see a lot of diversity until you get to a certain point, and then you don't. So I would like to throw it out to any of you. What advice do you have for organizations who may be in the beginning of trying to become diverse or have really solid diversity at a certain level, but want to see more diversity throughout their organizations? Who would like to answer that question?
I could give it a shot.
Okay.
So I also work for management consultancy firms, and management consultancy firms are very open. They are always trying to build a diverse, multi-talented workforce. And one of the big issues in management consultancy is getting enough females. So first of all, if you look at the population they recruit from, women are underrepresented there. So there is a fight to get as many female talented candidates as you can. And then if you look at the top, I mean, and it's public information. If you go to the websites of management consulting firms, you can see their partners. They're at a partner level, so at the top of the house, there are very few female partners. And all management consulting firms have the same issue. They would love to have more female partners, because they are in favor of diversity and inclusion, but also because it's good for business. And we, for example, can get as many assignments as we want to hire female partners for management consulting firms, and we just don't accept those assignments because we can't deliver on those. So what you have to do is build those more diverse workforces from the ground up. So I have one client in particular, which is very strong about providing programs for female consultants to go through the most difficult years for them, which is the years that they have, that's starting to build a family. And they have exceptional programs to help those females stay in the business. And then once they are beyond a certain point, they are actually ready to be developed to principal or partner level. So targeted programs is what really helps in those cases.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. I would say is a best practice that many organizations do take advantage of. But I want to actually turn it to Bonnie now, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity for Bonnie to speak a bit, especially because she's written a book called Women Who Make. And part of the book that she wrote gets right into women, specifically in an area where there's a shortage. So Bonnie, what can you tell us? Why did you even write the book?
Well, what the book is about, it's about inspiring real life stories about women who found vibrant, fulfilling careers in the STEM manufacturing industry. And through the interviews that I conducted with them, they tell their stories about not only about how they got into manufacturing, which many times was by mistake. It wasn't a conscious career choice, but they also share about why they think manufacturing is an excellent, viable STEM career choice for young women, and that the rewards of having a career in manufacturing are really theirs for the taking, just because there is such a need for skilled, talented workers. There is a skills gap. And I wrote the book because I have a unique perspective, being a woman who did grow up in manufacturing from a very young age. I was a toddler. I mean, I remember, I have memories of being a toddler holding my mother's hand as we visited my father at his precision machine shop in the early days when he had started his business. And the story, so I wanted to share about why I think that manufacturing is a great career choice for women. The main message in my story is that through my father's guidance and encouragement, this is what helped result in a successful career that spanned like 30 years. And so I think it's very important for women to have role models and mentors. So, Wim was talking about women and the need for having more women represented. And I think there are some changes that need to happen in the workplace in order for that to happen, in order to help develop women into future leadership roles. There needs to be some family-friendly policies in the organization for those challenging years, because many women do have careers and they also become mothers. A large percentage of them, 80% of women, according to my research, will have children at some point in their lifetime. And they're also responsible many times for caring for aging parents or others at certain times in their life. But the point I really want to drive home is that women need to see role models. They need to see people like them. They need to see females in positions, and women need to be mentored to move forward, because not to get into the whole networking, but men go golfing and do business there, and women tend to shy away from many of those opportunities that develop relationship, and have someone take them under their wing and help guide their career.
So Bonnie, I just want to dig a little more, because I think you hit on something that you might be able to add some insight into. So sometimes women are in an area, STEM area, it might be any area, where there aren't a lot of women. And some stay, but some opt out. So as you did your interviews, was there anything that was interesting that you learned that made women stay when they could have left?
Oh, that's a great question. And yeah, there's a few things that came up. First of all, there has to be that inclusive culture where women are valued, their ideas are valued, and they're not just, looked at as a female in the role. So, it's a reality that many manufacturing companies are male dominated. And though in all the companies, women in companies that I spoke with, many of them were leaders in manufacturing companies. So they hired women, and their companies were very welcoming to women on the manufacturing floor. Whereas I heard from other women just in my, journeys talking about the book, where that's not always the case. So there needs to be a shift in workplace culture. Leaders need to set that tone that we will be inclusive of not only women, but, all individuals who might look different than us, come from different places than we do. So assess your company's culture. Is it welcoming to women? Do workers feel comfortable interacting with employees of the opposite sex? If not, this is an indication of an area where you have to work on shifting and changing. And going back to the female models and mentors, women need to see more women like them in manufacturing and STEM fields that they can relate to, someone they can look up to. So what opportunities are in your organizations for women to be taken under someone else's wing in the organization to help them succeed? Is there an active mentorship program to help encourage women and other individuals who may be good promotional candidates? They might have the potential, the talent, but no one's taking an interest in developing them. I also think that implementing family-friendly policies. So are the policies, will they support women? And sometimes that's a cultural thing as well. There's not really importance put on that, taking time off of work to tend to family needs. And I've personally run into that with some of the manufacturing companies that I work with. So it really does take a shift in culture, and that really does begin at the top.
So Bonnie, I just want to chime in because I saw a few comments from Dr. Evelyn. Do you want to just, hello, Dr. Evelyn, thank you so much for your comments. And one of the interesting things that she put in the chat that I just want to point out is these policies that you're talking about, if applied across the organization, don't only help women, but they help men too. And that is a very interesting thing that I think sometimes we miss, that sometimes an organization is able to retain all people because of things that were actually put into place to retain some people. So I want to build on that too. And I want to go to Matthias, because in his, it's so interesting to hear about your organization. It's very diverse. And because you grew it, from 5 employees to this, there had to be some intentionality there, and you've kept people. So I want to hear what you've done to make people feel included. Why did they come, and why do they stay with your company?
Oh, thank you. I would like to start with the fact that we're probably at a different spectrum of my two co-panelists, since we're very production related. So we're looking for production workers, and we are desperate to find workers, and we have been desperate before COVID. So we are basically hiring everybody that wants to come in and work, and that's so we're not intentionally steering the diversity. However, when we hire people, most of those are the lowest paid jobs, which is packaging. And from there, of course, we want to retain them and keep them there and develop them. And the only chance that we have as a company, because people, especially if they're younger ones, they want to move up, they want to develop themselves, etc. They want to earn more money. The only way we can keep them is by creating a workplace culture that is inclusive for a small company like us, that gives opportunities. We have open door policies. I'm trying to make a point to call everybody by their name. We have opportunities within that they can go to the next step. They can go if they show attitude and aptitude, which I always say attitude cannot be taught, but aptitude can. You can maybe influence the attitude a little bit, but show them that there's a perspective within our company, which there is, and we have a few good examples that I would like to talk about. We have a lady, it's a young woman, single mom. She was packaging. She's only 5 foot tall, and we have big machines, and we have to carry stuff. And she showed the attitude and the aptitude, and came forward and said she wanted to do that. So I highly encourage that, and she's doing a great job. So that's one example. We also, if I may touch on, we do once in a while, we do barbecues with everybody. That means including myself, everybody. And we buy the sausages or the steak, and it's like a potluck style. And then we get we get from these one of the Yemeni employees. His wife is cooking for 2 weeks, and he brings a wonderful full Mid-Eastern dinner, etc. And I think that's showing the people that they are not only appreciated but also included. And that's for us the most important thing. And then in order to keep diversity, not only like this example, I mean, we have to be tolerant and look behind what people can really do and show them a perspective.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's amazing. Now I want to turn to Wim and just build on that a bit, because when you're tasked to go out and find really great talent for companies, diverse talent, but I'm sure, if you're placing people and they're not staying, that's not great for you or for your clients. So what advice do you share with your clients that you can also share with us today on retaining the great talent that you've worked really hard to get?
Thank you, Kristi. The most important word for retention for us is success. Success determines retention. And we spend a lot of time on the preparation of an assignment. So we try, first of all, to define success with the client. So we want to understand, and they really have to think about it usually. We want them to tell us, if we place this executive or this manager, and in 1 year, what will determine that this person is successful? And very often they haven't thought about that. So we help our clients go through defining success. And then when we know what success is, we try to do a reality check on if this is realistic. So sometimes they say, we want this vice president of sales is going to be successful if we have $100 million of extra revenues or $20 million of extra revenues. We want to understand then if that is actually realistic, or that not even a magician could do that. So we really spend time on defining what is success, then understanding whether success is possible. And then we discuss with each and every candidate we talk to what success will look like. And we go through a number of sessions with our candidates before we present them to have them prepare their thoughts, how they are going to deliver on that success. So before they even interview with our clients, we have gone through this exercise that they understand what is the task at hand and what is success. So for example, I work for a supplier which produces high-end transmissions for the mid-engine Corvette. There is a plant manager position and there is an operations manager position open. And these positions look like each other. And every single candidate we approach says, okay, I'm only interested in the plant manager position. So sure, we take them through the requirements. So what is success as a plant manager and what is success as an operations manager? And then several of them understand, well, maybe I should not go for the plant manager position, because if I do not meet the success requirements, I will not stay in that position. So we really try to be realistic about success with our clients, with the candidates, because we think that the overarching key to retention is success.
Thank you for that. Now I'm going to turn to Bonnie again, and it's interesting, and I just want to build on everything that we've talked about so far. A lot of times organizations have an external reason why they are driving for diversity, and or that's where they start. So they put together some targets and measures. They're thinking about how they want to move forward. But I want to ask you, based on your research, based on your personal experience, what advice do you have for organizations that want to move beyond compliance to really creating a rich environment of diversity and inclusion?
Well, before they can affect change, they have to identify what's not working or ideal in their organization. So senior leaders need to be willing to question everything from their own attitudes and beliefs about diversity and inclusion, as well as how does the company operate on a day-to-day basis. And this can include anything from their, HR practices, their hiring practices, to employee engagement within the organization, to educational and promotional opportunities that they provide individuals within the organization, and of course, everything in between. They can also use data to assess the company's level of diversity and inclusion at the workplace. So survey employees, ask employees to rate your company's current policies around equity and inclusion in the workplace. Especially insightful is the feedback that you get from non-Caucasian employees and how they rate their workplace. So find out what that current state is, and then from there you can create a handful of internal benchmarks for making progress on your diversity and inclusion mission and policies that you want to incorporate it within the organization. So it's really important that senior leaders and managers also have a consistent message that diversity and inclusion are important to the organization. There's many benefits, including, having, of course, a diverse workforce that has a diverse set of ideas. So this helps to fuel innovation. And leaders must also be willing to walk the talk and, of course, lay down their strategies for their companies, diversity and inclusive policies, not diversion, diversity.
Absolutely. Bonnie, thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm going to turn back to Matthias, because you have been a manufacturer in a very competitive job market. And then the pandemic happened and it became even more competitive. So I want to hear from you some of the unique approaches that you've used successfully to secure employees.
Well, there's a couple of ideas or approaches that we have tried. Some successful, some are not so successful. I would like to start with, we actually hired returning citizens, which is out of the prison system. There's some good programs there that one is in Ionia and in Michigan here in the system, which is vocational village, where they get a 9 months training, and we hired someone there. Right out of prison, I actually went in there to interview him, and we had a good success for 1 year. It was after the year the person turned, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean I'm giving up on this program. We also had, we do not do any drug tests or crime checks here. We work a lot with temp agencies, and so we're very tolerant, maybe naive, I don't know, but we have to lower our expectations there as well. We have other creative ideas that we work with autistic people, especially in packaging, which is a lot of repetitive work, and that's successful. And right now we're working on a program with an organization to specifically hire handicapped people that, we have lots of sit-down jobs, and we can accommodate them, hopefully, and we'll see how that works. We're also recruiting from assisted living places, retirees, someone that wants to get out and just do something. We do that. We promote our business here also in high schools and colleges, local high school. They have some kind of events where we can go and say, this is us. Why don't you come in, check it out for summer? That helps us. And the last idea that I have right now that we haven't tried yet, due to the pandemic, is we're planning to have a shuttle go to an area where we own a property in a demographically challenged area, I would say, and just pick them up. And because we realized, especially in the field that we're looking, a lot of people want to work, but they don't have transportation. So if we can provide it, then maybe we can find people there and just basically have a Hugo Benzing shuttle going back and forth. That's our unique approach. We also had one employee that got in trouble, a young guy. I mean, I can't. Well, I don't want to judge it, and I am not judging it, but he had to go to prison for 3 years, and I promised him while he was in prison that when he comes back, he will have a job again, because he has a good attitude and is a good kid. They didn't do anything violent or anything that wouldn't be acceptable here. And we hired him, and he's doing great. And I'm actually considering to support him to get a educational training. So every day we have other different ideas. Some work more or less. It's a struggle, and we have to come up with more creative ideas in the future, for sure.
So I'm just going to dig into something that you shared earlier, because there's something special that I'm hearing about this environment that's beyond the diversity. So you said that you know everyone, you call people by their names. There's a whole community piece that's been created. And I find that really interesting, because sometimes people would think, when you have a lot of different people from different backgrounds, and you have people who might be disabled, you have people, gender, all ethnicities, and it's all in one place, but somehow there's synergy, there's engagement, and even from some of the things we talked about, it sounds like people give discretionary effort. They're going beyond the basics. So what do you think that you've done, either intentionally or maybe just has, it's grown over time, that's made this workplace so special?
Well, as you said, I think the word is to create community. And coming back to what Wim said, you have to define or set people up for success, which means people need to have expectations, clear expectations, in order to perform and to be successful. That is very important to us. They also need to know that the culture that I'm talking about, that I'm encouraging making mistakes. It's not, if you don't try anything, you won't get any ahead. And we have, as I mentioned before, open door policies, and we're showing those perspectives. And we have demonstrated that there is a perspective for the workforce, no matter what or who they are. And also that we do events. We're very small, so it's fairly easy to do so, to create a community. We're trying to not have this, and I have that confirmed, or I'm talking to the employees. We don't have this them and us, really. I also always preach, nobody's too good for anything, and our management, including myself, we're not too good to go out there and whatever, fix a machine or clean up or help out if needed.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to turn to Wim now, and I just want to hear from you, considering all the things that we've talked about so far, and you think about some of the client companies you've worked with. Where have you seen like an amazing example of diversity at work? Whether it is a great pipeline, great development, do you have a story that you can share with us? We'd love to hear it.
Well, the greatest examples I've just heard from Matthias, but that doesn't fall under the category that we have worked together. But I have seen phenomenal results when you embrace diversity. I mentioned that in Brazil, one of the big hurdles is socioeconomic status. I worked in management consultancy for many years, and I was managing partner for South America, and we were recruiting. And one of the biggest talents I thought was somebody who was going to be not going to be included in our interview pool by the recruiting team. I had spent time with that person. He was a person of color. The complaints of my team was that he was not wearing a good suit. He had cheap shoes, and he was wearing white tennis socks. I actually went beyond that during my conversations with him and found out that he entered university, one of the top universities in Brazil, scoring the number 2 test out of 25,000 applicants. And since I also didn't think he was wearing a great suit, and I concluded that he was probably not from very well-off parents, so I knew how much more this young man had overcome to score the number 2 test out of 25,000, competing with mainly private school students who had a way better education than he had. So I suggested to my team to take the young man shopping and get him the suits they wanted, the shoes they wanted, the socks they wanted, the shirts they wanted. And 20 years later, I was very happy to read last week on LinkedIn that he is now the controlling shareholder and CEO of the largest diagnostics company in Brazil. And he made his career before that with the private equity fund, which owns Tim Hortons, Burger King, Anheuser-Busch, and Heinz. So this is an example of where I believe you have to think out of the box. And I was shocked actually to see that somebody who was obviously so talented that he wouldn't even have made it to our interview process if I wouldn't have spoken with him, just because of his white tennis socks and his cheap shoes. So that is just an example of what overcoming diversity can do. And I was watching the chat. One of the I think it was Mario who just asked whether diversity and inclusion is good for the employer or for the employees. I think it's for both. It's for employees because you want everybody to have a fair chance on opportunities, but it's also good business for employers. This person was instrumental in some of the largest takeovers in the consumer products business in the world, and he's now running a huge diagnostics company in Brazil, which has a COVID pandemic devastating the country. So he's doing very important work, and he will contribute to society in big time. Another example is we have automotive supplier clients who want vice presidents of sales or directors of sales and explicitly ask for females, because the OEMs have been leading in terms of workplace diversity. And if you look at Ford Motor Company or General Motors or FCA, now Stellantis, what their procurement staff is and their engineering staff, there are many females. And it is good business for an automotive supplier to have in that senior management team of sales also females. Now, we are right now working on an assignment for a vice president of sales for an automotive supplier, and it's virtually impossible for us to find the right candidates because the companies haven't developed that talent yet. So it's very hard to find that, but that definitely is a key point of interest.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I would just build on that to say, I've been in situations where there was a shortage of talent when we stayed in industry. And sometimes we had to look at parallel industries. Who might be in a parallel industry? What would they need to learn? Those kind of things. So sometimes it's just, pivoting a bit. And I think that's what everyone has talked about today. I want to turn to Bonnie because like Wim, I'm sure, especially through all the interviews that you did, you probably have a really interesting story where someone was, you said there were a lot of people who entered manufacturing by mistake and then became wildly successful. So I would love to hear a story of an accident that became a remarkable career.
Yeah, I had quite a few of those stories. And the first one that comes to my mind is a young woman. She had just graduated from college, or in fact, this one, I don't even think she had graduated from college. She was out of high school, just graduated high school and was looking for a job. She hadn't gone to college. So she was hired as a receptionist at a manufacturing organization. And she did that for a while. And then she moved up into accounting. She was, learned some things about accounting and moved up into that. And then she progressed to becoming the production manager and quality control manager in the organization at the time. And as it turned out, the business owner, he saw potential in her. He saw that she was, bright, intelligent. She was enthusiastic about the work. She was diverse. She could, work in almost any area of the organization. And he had no successors for the business. So he saw something in her, and he inquired if she was interested in buying the company from him. And she told me that she didn't hesitate. She bought the company, and it's 30 years later. She's still running the business. She has daughters who are active in the business, 3 daughters. She has a stepdaughter as well. She has, more than 50% of her workforce is female. So it's a little bit more, it's not the 50-50, it's a little bit more imbalanced, but, she has a number of daughters who are working in the organization. And her daughters love the business as well. So, the story is that she was a receptionist and just progressed through the ranks in the business, built her career, bought the company, and it's very successful today. It has been in business many, many years. And I think that was one of the stories that stand out most to me.
Thank you for sharing. Now, Matthias, and maybe not just in this organization, but when you think back over your experience in your career, is there a story that stands out to you with regards to diversity and inclusion that you'd like to share?
Well, actually, and now that I hear the 2 great stories, I have also one to share, which is recent, actually, from our company here. We had a worker that is a Nigerian, actually no, from Cameroon. He's an immigrant, and he's in his 30s, and he has a family to support. And we hired him through a temp agency, and he was an operator. And we realized that he was progressing pretty quickly. His native language is French, and he has a heavy accent. So we're not afraid of accents, obviously. And I talked to him, and he says, "Yeah, I'm going to engineering school while I'm supporting my family with this operator job." So we did. I said, "That's great. I'd like to support that," and we accommodated him for when he had exams or something to prepare, or he had to leave for anything there. And he graduated, and we made him a quality engineer, and he's now our quality manager, and is doing real well. So that's the one story that comes to my mind. It's really quick.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So now I just wanted to dig in and just ask a few questions. So from all of you, for the people who are listening today, what are some practical things that they can start doing right now to support diversity and inclusion in their workplaces? Let's start with Wim.
Thank you, Kristi. As I said, retention is driven by success. I think that developing more diversity and inclusion also has one keyword, and it's honesty. I believe that every company should perform a fair assessment of their diversity in terms of the hard facts and figures, but also the soft aspects. So also understanding what the culture is in terms of acceptance of people who are different. And Matthias has listed many people, has mentioned many people who were different. Bonnie also mentioned something which resonated very, very much with me. She said, you have to especially listen to people who are not Caucasian males. So I think that is very important that you try to capture the reality of your company very well, not just from, hey, we have 10% Latinos. No, also, are those Latinos actually accepted? Or are they just tolerated because the work has to be done? So the honesty, I think, is very important when you want to promote diversity and inclusion. And I had a client recently which wanted me to get them a plant director for a plant with 500 people. They are an automotive, actually German automotive supplier. I'll keep it a little vague. They are in one of the rural states of the United States. Their 500 employees live in a community of 2,000 inhabitants and some surrounding smaller townships. And the client said, we as a company are very much in favor of diversity. However, for this specific position, we think, looking at the demographics of our plants, which is basically 500 whites, and they are not tolerant to people who are different. So we believe that a candidate from a minority group would be set up for failure. And I thought long and hard about that. And then in the end, I came to the conclusion that I had to follow their lead there. And I didn't present them minority candidates because I thought not only is the risk of failure present, but also a physical safety aspect of that person and his or her family living in that small community. So that, I think, is very important, to be very honest. And even if you are an organization which promotes diversity and inclusion, like for example, the OEMs are great examples of that. But I spoke with a good friend of mine who is very experienced. He is Afro-American himself, and he told me that just recently, 2 of the vehicle OEMs have settled $10 million lawsuits because although their culture is pro-inclusion and pro-diversity, because they are examples of diversity in the US, they still each had a case of a noose hanging at a plant, and this led to a lawsuit. And as I said, both were settled for more or less $10 million each. So you have to go to almost extremes to fully understand your culture to make sure that diversity and inclusion can happen.
So let me turn to Bonnie at this point, and let me just ask you, as you think about what's been shown, shared, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think leaders need to be willing to question everything about their own attitudes and beliefs about diversity and inclusion. And I think this panel today is a great place to start, where we're learning about diversity and inclusion, and just listening to Matthias and Wim, it's just amazing, the stories and the insights that they're sharing. So leaders need to be willing to question their own attitudes and beliefs about diversity and inclusion through self-reflection. And I also believe that diversity and inclusion in the workplace starts with leading with empathy. I heard a lot of that today. Leading with empathy in interactions with, in all interactions with employees, especially those who belong to marginalized groups.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Matthias,
Yes, I have a quick one for you.
Please.
I would say my advice would be look at your team and your personnel. Ask yourself which one you could be a candidate for development against your own bias, which we all have. We can admit that. We all have that. Overcome that and give them a chance, make them a poster child. It's my quick.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So I'd love to go to Q&A. So who has questions for our panel? What questions do you have for our panelists?
Maybe I can ask a question. I was desperately trying to look for, raise the hand or whatever, but I guess that's the wrong platform here. So I was switching between Zoom and Teams and everything out there, so it's challenging. My question is a rather practical one. And I put that in the chat already a little bit, like, you know, when we're looking into become a more diverse employer, because that's the way to go, you know, and that's what needs to happen. Is where should you start, or where should one start? To me right now, it looks like, you know, you have to in the end look at all the different, you know, aspects and all of that, but there should be a place, or you know, there must be a place where you recommend, like, hey, start here and then go from there and take it from there. And I just threw it in there. I would assume, my thinking here, you know, it could start or should start also with job descriptions. You know, is that really what the job needs, or what the position needs? You know, because I find ourselves as employers, not just in Germany, but also here in the United States, you're always looking for, you know, for a dream candidate, knowing that that person's not out there.
Well, I have an idea. And this is really a fact-based approach where you can begin. And I think it's, you know, looking at your company workforce, and does it look like the demographics of the geographic area? I mean, this is, it's a great place to start. It's fact-based. And if there are big gaps in representation, this might give you an indication of where to focus for. So I'm talking about, you know, gender, race, that sort of thing, culture. What is generation? You know, do you have boomers? Do you have Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, Gen Z? You know, what's the makeup of your workforce? I mean, that's a real fact-based approach. And then, of course, I think, you know, that can tell you whether or not you have that diverse and perhaps a diverse and inclusive workforce. And then go from there. And that's where, you know, take a look at our own attitudes and beliefs about diversity and inclusion. Lead with empathy. Matthias, he gave some great examples about giving people opportunities, as did Wim. And I have those stories as well. And, you know, from my years in owning our own company, of giving people a chance and giving people opportunities for educational and development opportunities to help grow their careers, raise their standard of living.
I'll just round that out too, because I think a lot of times, just from my personal experience, so I'm going to step off the moderator and become a mini panelist for a second, is people want to start by recruiting, but you can get the best people, but if your organization is not ready to welcome those individuals, you're going to lose them. So being able to think about what do you need to do internally to prepare, and then bring people in and retain them. So that would be the piece that I would just round out, just building on what Bonnie shared. What other questions do we have? I saw a hand go up, and I don't want to mispronounce, but I'm going to try here. Rita? Do you want to unmute?
Yes.
Yes, I'd love to hear your question.
Yes, thanks for your lovely presentation. My name is Reza. Yes, it's Reza. I want to say to Mario, there's a reaction. If you go there, it's a raise hand and lower hand. It's a function that you can test it. I find it now. It's in reaction. So it's a question about if you want to have a top manager and you want to have a manager and to say, I want to know this manager have this diversity competence because he want to work or she want to work with 200 employees and he should have this diversity competence. Is it something that I can understand? Because I have a customer that he should show the company that he have a diversity competence or diversity skills. Is it something that can we measure it or say, okay, Matthias has the diversity competence because he have a employee from Tunisian? I don't know. Is it something that measurable?
Who would like to share?
I don't think it's measurable. I mean, it's one of those soft skills or soft competencies that one has to figure out during a interview process. So
Do
I
you
don't
know
think
what
it's
is
measurable.
Yeah, it's a question, for example, when they want to apply as a leader or as a manager in a company, and this company said, if you want to be in our company as a manager, you should have a diversity competency. And it's very typical in Germany, they should have a cover letter and they should write down that I have very competency in diversity. Is it something that we can write a sentence that show that people have this competency? Or how you can to show that you are a person that have these diversity skills?
I can share.
I think it could be demonstrated by having the person interact with all kinds of diverse people. Other than that, it's just leading by example. In my case here, how do I show that I have diversity competence, let's call it, or that I like diversity? I mean, I have to stand behind those diverse people and be an example that I'm including them.
Absolutely. And Wim, would you like to share too?
Yeah, thank you. When we interview candidates, we address their experience. So with what types of different people have you worked during your career? How have you experienced working in a diverse team? Could you give us examples of what you thought was very good? Could you take us through the challenges you've had while working with people who didn't look like you or didn't have the same background as you? And when you ask open questions, you will find out a wealth of experience, and you get a feel for how genuine, how sincere somebody is, and whether this person just has good intentions or whether this person has good intentions and also a lot of experience in making changes for the better happen.
Yeah, I think those are great ideas. And also, you know, when we're talking about soft skills, I think what it really comes down to is they're really hard to measure. It's not like, you know, someone can take an aptitude or a skills test and get a score. I think what you can do to help measure soft skills is observe behaviors, you know, observe behaviors of individuals, whether it be someone you're thinking about hiring, or the organization itself. So an example of that might be is how is this person to be around? How well do they get along with others? Do they collaborate well with others? Are they supportive? You know, what are their behaviors in a group? It could also be motivation is a big thing. Do they have that drive for achievement, for improving things? Are they motivated to action? Do they have energy? So it comes down to behaviors, observing behaviors.
Right. So we have come to our time and a bit over. So if at this point, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to each of you for taking time out of your day to come and spend time with us during this panel. And thank you to each of the panelists. What a wealth of knowledge and very diverse experience. It was just a joy to be able to be your moderator today. So thank you. And at this point, I believe you have a tiny break.
Thank you.
Exactly. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Kristi, for moderating. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for helping us. Have a wonderful day. I see you maybe in panel 3 or in panel 4.
Thank you. Bye-bye.